Rikuzen Takata is hardly the city it once was. Its history is divided into before and after March 11th, the day the earthquake and tsunami struck. In August, a photojournalist from New York cast his trained eye on the community. John Isaac is no stranger to catastrophe. He spent some 3 decades documenting war zones and devastated areas around the world in his work with the United Nations. This time, he aimed his lens at a city still struggling to revive itself after 5 months. The tsunami tore through the central part of town, where 24,000 people lived. More than 2,000 died or are still unaccounted for. 3,000 homes were destroyed. The rumble of the removal of rubble has become a constant presence. But the city is still working on a plan for restoring itself once the debris is gone. First impressions are often the most intense and long-lasting. When John looked around upon his arrival, he quickly reached the conclusion that the force of the tsunami had been greater than he expected. Cars that used to carry people around town are now piled up as scrap.
When I see all these cars like this, I'm thinking that it belongs to somebody. Maybe you save money to buy a car, a second car, and you polish it, you keep it so, and then it's all like in a graveyard, you know, so it's so ironic. All in 1 minute, everything changes.
John Isaac is watching things change again as the people of Rikuzen Takata summon the energy to restore their community. His pictures of them are portraits of courage.
This program is made possible by Olympus.
What's that mean?
It means Olympus lets you see what you want to see. What do you see?
Happiness.
With an Olympus endoscope, I hope to find the patient's diseases at their earliest stages.
I'm unraveling the mysteries of genes and cells using a microscope.
I'm looking after the structural safety of airplanes with an industrial videoscope.
Olympus is amazing!
Committed to your health and happiness. Olympus.
The coast of Rikuzen Takata faces the Pacific Ocean. The seashore has sank by 2 meters under the water by the earthquake. A 3-kilometer wide pine forest is now just a memory, swept away by the tsunami. 70,000 beautiful trees were uprooted. But one survived. After the tsunami, the residents of Rikuzen Takata found it struggling, but still standing as a reminder of what was and a symbol of what could be. They call it the Pine of Hope.
Wow. There I see the pine tree.
This tree was one of the things John knew he wanted to see. Before the disaster, the forest was a source of pride for the city. It was rich and full.
Hello.
Now, they lavish their attention on the one piece that remains.
Your family?
Yoshihiro Oyama is a landscape gardener. Every day, he comes to tend to the pine tree. Oyama scatters especially strong fertilizer around. If the tree were a hospital patient, it would be considered in serious condition. The roots are soaked with seawater as the seashore sank under the water. All the salt is compromising the root system. Oyama has surrounded the pine tree with steel plates to protect it from any more of the water. He also pumps out the water that's already in there all day long. It's critical care for a prominent member of the community.
自分の夢はですよ。自分の夢は世界中の人たちが来てこの松原に木を植えてほしい。岩手県の松原でもなくて国のものでもなくて世界中の松原であってほしい。
Generations may be needed for the tree to flourish again, but Oyama devotes his attention to the here and now, doing what he can to support its recovery. Oyama himself fared better than many in the tsunami. His house at the top of a hill escaped the waves.
ここでいいかな。
One of his prized possessions is this garden planter. He uses it to nurture the pine seedlings he placed there. He grafted sprouts from the lone tree that survived onto the stems. Summer is not the best time to carry out that sort of operation, but he had no choice. Under his care, the seedlings are showing encouraging signs, and he's now trying to grow numerous trees carrying the DNA of the Pine of Hope.
ちょっとした形にはなってくれるかも。そういう今夢見る段階なので、夢見るのは勝手だから誰にも文句言えないはずなので、俺の気持ちが薄ったのかもしれない。もしかしたらね。
With all this calamity and all of it, just as one little tree is a symbol of hope. It's a sign of hope, and that's why I told you I'm so happy that I met him, because he made me feel so happy, and he's so dedicated to make it survive. And from this, some grafting with the DNA, getting a new plants coming.
This area along the Pacific Ocean used to be a prosperous fishing region. But the tsunami destroyed most of the fishing boats that worked in these waters. The docks were devastated too, creating formidable obstacles to resuming the trade anytime soon. The city of Ofunatu, next to Rikuzen Takata, is another place that lost many of its fishing boats. But fishermen there have gone back to work using those boats that weathered the storm. At 7 in the morning, a fishing boat has returned to port. Before the earthquake, more than 20 such boats used to unload their catch. On this day, the fishermen came back with a huge catch of mackerel, salmon, and squid. The operation is about 10% of what it used to be. Still, the port is busy with middlemen auctioning the best fish, just as they used to.
20ぐらい組んでねえの20歳ぐらいたった間もう3カードしかやってる負けねえから負けねえ
The tsunami deposited many of the boats onto land, not unlike beached whales. Most of them were removed or demolished, but one is still around. In the garden of Shizuko Oikawa.
朝帰ってきたらこの船が前にドンといたのでびっくりしてねこの船がなんでここにってびっくりしましたこの船
The boat shares the garden with a bellflower in full bloom. It's the only plant that survived the tsunami.
ここ花畑だったの全部花畑だったの はいどうぞ。はいはいどうぞ。
ありがとう。
母がね浮いてくれた気境が おかげさまで咲いたからね、嬉しい。ねえ、20年も前ですよ。母が生きてる時に。
Oikawa is hoping to move back home from an evacuation center as soon as possible and enjoy the bellflower her mother planted. The tsunami was a relentless traveler. It even reached the Yahagi district, some 10 kilometers from the shore, in the city of Rikuzen Takata. Rice paddies inundated with seawater are no longer suitable for rice farming. Sunflower seeds were planted instead. A rice farmer, Tomio Murakami, took John to his sunflower garden.
ここ一帯ひまわり。この一帯も水田だったんです。
Everyone in the Yahagi district had to give up rice farming this year.
ひどいです。もうだから今土じゃないでしょこれ。砂だもの。ほら。土じゃないんだよ。砂。だからもうこれぐらい波が来たってことだよね。
The sunflower seeds were planted at the beginning of June. Here's what it looked like then. Sunflowers absorb salt from the ground. Murakami and his neighbors in temporary housing wrapped every seed in a piece of mud as protection from birds. For those whose lives were disrupted by the tsunami, planting the sunflower seeds took their minds off their troubles. They could envision flower-filled fields and anticipate resumption of rice growing next year. In the middle of the summer, the sunflowers started to bloom. But not as fast as had been hoped. Most probably, the salt content of the soil is just too high. Sunflowers hold a special meaning for John Isaac. He told Murakami about an experience 17 years in the past. As a UN photographer, John was a witness to misery around the world. Eventually, it proved to be too much for him. He fell into depression and couldn't bring himself to take even a snapshot. But one day, the clouds parted.
I saw in my neighbor's backyard this beautiful sunflower, and I looked at it, and it was smiling at me, and I got very excited. And I loaded a roll of film, and I ran outside, and the butterfly was still there, and it kept coming back, and it was sitting on the sunflower. So I shot 36 frames, and it sort of made me happy, and it sort of motivated me to come back and take my photography.
After crossing the globe countless times in search of photos, he found inspiration in a subject growing right next door to his own home. That sunflower gave him the strength to re-engage with life and resume his career. Murakami saw something in himself in John's story. He too is trying to recover from the sorrow brought on by the destruction that surrounds him.
私も生かさせてもらう津波にでこの一帯も自然津波に負けちゃったのねどうしようもないだけどみんなで花っこでもいいから咲かして一歩バックするんじゃなくて一歩前に進むべきそれから始まっただから種まいた時もみんなの顔が満開もう心からだからもうあの時6月4日5日で津波に負けた連中がもうあそこで津波買ったんだもんだから今から津波に負けたんじゃなくて津波楽しもうと花を見ながら絶対負けねえからよかったね今日は会って
Thank you. And what you're doing is even wonderful.
咲いた
And with that, the survivors of March 11th are themselves finding a model for standing tall amidst fields of devastation. During this summer, Rikuzen Takata operated a swimming pool bus. It takes the children whose schools were destroyed to a place where they can be just kids again.
My name
Kyoko Suzuki is a 6th grader. She was separated from her parents for 2 days after the earthquake.
Yes. You like swimming?
Since then, she's suffered flashbacks, tormented by visions of the tsunami that took some of her friends.
Yes. How are you?
Kyoko is hardly the only child to have suffered emotionally. Quite a few have shown symptoms of post-traumatic stress disorder. The normal joy of childhood is missing from many of their faces. The swimming pool bus gives the children a respite from dwelling on their sadness, at least for part of the day. After spending 3 hours at the pool, John joined the kids on the bus back home.
You had a good swim? Oh, my name? John. John? Good?
John, good.
目を出した種がいる空の上にもまだ空があると思ってた大きな世界の真ん中で一番になりたくて今もいつまでも大きくなりたくて精一杯ジャンプするあなたの姿とても輝いてるどんなに辛くてもどんなに苦しくても頑張るあなたこそが一番さ
In the Nagaska district, the citizens were preparing for the summer festival. Many in northeast Japan thought they'd have to forego the Star Festival that's been celebrated for hundreds of summers, but they found a way to put it on a smaller scale. People were busy making a float that's essential for the event. The original float had been destroyed. Toshio Fukuda lost his family, friends, and his home to the disaster, but he went around asking his neighbors to help stage the festival. Especially since so much of what they knew is gone, he felt that they should not give up on the festival too. 9 of Rikuzen Takata's 12 floats were ruined. The neighbors worked on a new one late into the night. One of the originals was found in the rubble.
ちょうどそこの部分の左奥の方に格納スペースがあります。で、まあ家を多分乗り越えながら転がってここに来たということで。
A dozen neighborhoods in Rikuzen Takata used to maintain their own floats. They were symbols of community pride.
ここまで流されてきたのが、出汁がやってほしいという意思表示なのかなということで、とにかく、まあ、仲間も家族も亡くなってるんですが、 にかく鎮魂のための元々のお祭りなんで鎮魂のためのそれをやらないと意味がないだろうということでやってます。
Fukuda felt the festival would help re-establish personal ties and encourage residents to regroup. August 7th was the date of the event. It was to be held at the elementary school playground. Fukuda and his Yahagi neighbors had planned to have a small festival by themselves, but the enthusiasm spread, and it ended up with 5 floats. The girl John met at the swimming pool was one of those from another part of the city who joined in.
You're playing today? Very nice to see you. She's playing now.
She's saying she's going to play that over.
Yeah, yeah. Very good. How are you? Good?
Since the first grade, she's been playing the flute at the festival.
Yeah, it's very good. Very good.
From the small seed of an idea, the festival grew to more than 5,000 participants. Volunteers from across the country also organized activities for the children during that time. Many young lives were lost in the disaster. At this moment, though, Kyoko's attention was focused on festival matters. One of the traditional practices for the event is especially poignant this year. It's writing a wish on a strip of paper and placing it on a bamboo stick. The wishes are believed to be sent to the stars to come true. Kyoko's wish is to become a school teacher.
こういう津波の経験したことを話して避難訓練とかの時とかに役立てればいいと思うから。
Music from all 12 neighborhoods lifted the mood of everyone within earshot. They competed against each other to see who could play the best. And in the middle of it all was Toshio Fukuda, the man who first called on his neighbors to put the festival together.
子供たちがね、すごい笑顔じゃないですか。それがすごい嬉しいですよね。
The scope of the festival expanded. Instead of staying put at the playground, the floats paraded across the city. Summer is also the season in which the souls of deceased persons come home from heaven, according to traditional beliefs. The parade of floats also was to serve as a guide for the souls to find their way safely. About 20,000 people throughout the Northeast died in the disaster or are unaccounted for. The people of Rikuzen Takata played music to honor their souls. Those who survived await a comprehensive national plan to rebuild their cities and towns. But they're also doing what they can do themselves to construct their own future. It's a paradox, but one that makes sense under the circumstances. Looking to the future and honoring those who made this their home in the past. On the last day of his visit to Rikuzen Takata, John went back to the Pine of Hope. It is a symbol that speaks for itself.
I saw the spirit of all the people here, how courageous they are, and they have overcome. They are not sitting and mourning over it, but they've sort of pulled themselves together, and very courageously they want to go forward. And this is what I think is the pride of Japan. And they are strong people and strong-willed people, and that's why I believe that everything will be fine.
Portraits of courage, taken by a photographer who already sees renewal developing.
This program was made possible by Olympus.
What's that mean?
It means Olympus lets you see what you want to see. What do you see?
Happiness.
With an Olympus endoscope, I hope to find the patient's diseases at their earliest stages.
I'm unraveling the mysteries of genes and cells using a microscope.
I'm looking after the structural safety of airplanes with an industrial video scope.
Olympus is amazing.
Committed to your health and happiness. Olympus.
The city of Ishinomaki lost much of its population to the earthquake and tsunami. Olympus Corporation and its employees are doing what they can to make the city habitable again. Volunteers are removing debris from residential areas. They've made 5 trips, 100 staff members in all. The work has to be done by hand. The space is too confined for heavy equipment. This survivor of the quake runs a construction company.
自分一人では何もできないから、やっぱ大勢の人に助けてもらわないとね。
The idea to encourage employees to help came from the chairman and CEO of Olympus. And many of the volunteers want to return and do more, so the company is assembling another visit in September.
まあ割と重いですけど、まあ運べるぐらいの重さなので大丈夫。
一人で入りたい、でもなかなか勇気が出せないとか、あるいは機材の問題、滞在の費用の問題、いろんな意味を会社の方でクリアしてあげて。
The volunteers also held science lab sessions for school children. Since their company is involved in optics, they help the kids learn about light and lenses. The participants conducted experiments using handmade tools. One of the projects involved making kaleidoscopes. Rainbow-colored lights flashed before their eyes.
初めてのことばっかなので、あとなんかすごい光のこととかも勉強できて、すごい楽しいです。
Learning by doing. It's one way that a company can help a community see beyond its current problems.
取材をします。